relates to public safety here in the city of Little Rock. What we'll do today is just kind of run through different initiatives that the city of Little Rock has been working on for quite some time, and some that we announced 2 weeks ago, and some that we know that we will continue to have more work to do as it relates to public safety, police reform, and police accountability here in the city of Little Rock. But first, as many understand and know that some may say serendipitously, 2 weeks ago, this administration announced that we would have an independent review of the Little Rock Police Department's policies, procedures, and practices, and that we would soon name those individuals. And so today, we will name those individuals for the independent review committee of the Little Rock Police Department's policies, procedures, as well as practices. And so what we have to understand is these protests that we're experiencing, this period of time of what I would call our nation's justice movement and justice era, that we understand that justice is a universal language, that justice will not only heal our land, it will hold our land accountable and change our land for the better. The protests and the demands for police reform after the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis has shone a spotlight on the need for an independent, comprehensive review, and that I called these 2 weeks ago. I want to reiterate that this administration, from our campaign, has always campaigned on police reform and accountability. This is nothing new. This is a part of our ACT plan, which means to be accountable, to be clear, and to be transparent. And so, as we all understand, part of the ACT plan that we instituted some 18 months ago started first with the understanding that we needed to fund body-worn cameras. That was added into the 2020 budget, and we will have that go before the City Board of Directors tomorrow, and we welcome the passage of the funding for body-worn cameras. We understand that we've talked about a Citizens Review Board. We'll talk a little bit about that today as well. That Citizens Review Board was passed this past summer due to the lack of a vote for emergency clause. It had to go through a period of waiting before we could name those members of the Citizens Review Board. After that period, we named those individuals in the fall of last year. In the early part of this year, they went through law enforcement training, as well as different types of civil rights training, things of that nature. And then COVID happened, and so that has been the delay in them having their first meeting. But we'll make an announcement about that. And so from the Independent Review Board of the Little Rock Police Department's policies, procedures, and practices, to funding for body-worn cameras, to understanding the various things that we are working through, these are all part of our ACT plan to be accountable, clear, and transparent. And so today I want to now name those individuals for the Independent Review Committee of LRPD. Number 1 would be retired Lieutenant Benny F. Bowers, who is a retired lieutenant from the Michigan State Police, who is a native of Little Rock and has retired back home, but he's a retiree from the Michigan State Police. Ferronda Brassfield, who is a local attorney and also executive director of the Decarcerate organization. Archie Bird, who's also a local attorney and one of the managing partners for the Mays Bird law firm. Paula Casey, who was a former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District. John DePippa, who's Dean Emeritus at Bowen School of Law. Tamika Edwards, who is the executive director at Philander Smith College's Social Justice Institute. Michelle Kamerling, who is a local attorney at Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. Philip Kaplan, who is a local attorney and noted civil rights attorney as well, of counsel at a local law office. And Dr. Terry Trevino Richard, who is professor emeritus of UA Little Rock with the Department of Sociology. And so in addition to this independent review committee, they will be working in collaboration with a firm that focuses on these reviews of this type of a nature. And so there will be an RFQ that will be coming out in the coming weeks to help with fact finding will be guided by the scope of the independent review committee. And once those facts are presented to that committee will review that conclusion report and provide recommendations. And then that firm will then carry out the mode of the report that will be presented. Finally, As it relates to the Citizens Review Board, I shared the scale of understanding of why we haven't had our first meeting as it relates to COVID-19, as well as the lack of an emergency clause that was not passed at that point in time. We will have that first meeting where they will vote on the bylaws, they will vote on the chairperson, and also want to announce that the first hearing will be the police incident that was in the press a couple months ago with State Representative Vivian Flowers, as well as Reverend Ryan Davis. So that will be the first hearing. They'll be a part of that process from that standpoint. And so also there will be a number of different policy changes that are part of this process that we've been working towards. And those policy changes as it relates to the Little Rock Police Department, I'm going to ask Chief Humphrey to give an update on those policy changes that we are working towards to put in action. Chief Humphrey.
Thank you, Mayor. As always, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and your support. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to start off by once again thanking our amazing residents of the city of Little Rock. We had several protests this weekend, very peaceful. Messages were heard, concerns were expressed, and I want to tell those citizens that I get it. You have a mayor that gets it. You have a police department that gets it. And so we wanted to share thank you all so much for your professionalism and continue to stand strong. One of the things that I've been working on and the department's been working on, if you all remember, during the hiring process, one of the things I spoke about was transparency. I truly believe that it's important for the police department to be transparent. I always say this, that the police department and city government exists because our residents allow us to exist based on their passion for the city and their tax dollars, and they should have only top-notch response and service from local government. One of the things that I want to share with you all this morning is that we have been in initial conversations with the Arkansas State Police. I think it is time for Arkansas State Police to review all of our officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths. We're in early discussions with that, so nothing has come to fruition, but we have been talking with them regarding them working all of our officer-involved shootings. We also believe that is extremely important. The citizens deserve that. It doesn't mean that we don't have confidence, or I as the chief don't have confidence in our department to investigate, but in these times, you're part of 21st century policing is being transparent, and how much more transparent can you be when you have a third party investigate incidents such as. The other thing that we will be doing in the very near future, we will be modifying our use of force policy. We're going to look at modifying the name of that policy, but one of the things that's going to stand out is we're going to have a duty to intervene section in that policy. This is something that we already have throughout our general orders. In our rules and regulations, we have something similar to that, but I believe as the chief of police and listening to the community and just based on best practices in 21st century, we need to have a clear-cut wording that provides our officers that they need to intervene when they see something that is not right, excessive force, other misconduct. And so we want to make that very clear that that's going to be a vital part of our policies and procedures. The other thing that I want to share with, we did some talking, my staff and I, my adjutant lieutenant and my project manager, we did some talk this weekend. And one of the things that we are going to create, I've tasked and we're creating, is the CCC team, and that is Constructive Creative Conversation team. And we're going to be recruiting residents throughout the city to participate in this. It's not going to be just one particular area. We're going to recruit residents from all over the city. We haven't set the number yet, but we're going to have open and critical discussion regarding things that are occurring in our city, how to prevent those things. As law enforcement officers, as a police chief, I don't have all the answers. But I will tell you, if we can have constructive conversation, from a diverse group. And this includes not only, I want to include individuals that may have been incarcerated at some time, individuals, all socioeconomic areas, members from the police department to sit down and have those really strong conversations and help us get better. The other thing is that last week we met with our faith-based partners, and we are going to be more consistent in our meetings with our faith-based partners. We believe that we can do that quarterly. We have some really, really amazing faith-based partners in this city, and so we want to grow with that because of the voices that our faith-based leaders have, not only in their churches but also in the community. So we think that these initiatives are going to help us become more transparent. I think we're transparent. We're going to continue to become transparent. We owe that to our citizens. We owe that to our officers. And we're going to continue to do that. So just a little bit over this past weekend, we had several protests. As you know, we had several that convened at the state capitol. We had several that convened at several other locations inside the city. Amazingly peaceful. I participated in one of those that led from the capitol to just right a few blocks and back. It was amazing. But just to see the peaceful and the passion from our residents and what they believe and what they're standing for, to know that they're standing along in solidarity with the other residents of other cities throughout the nation. Also, we had a total of 6 arrests last night, all traffic warrants, no vandalism, no damage, no public uprising, nothing, no contingent, there was no incidents of violence, so I wanted to share that with everyone. We've been very fortunate in that effort, and also I wanted to share that. And right now we're having a gathering outside the Northwest substation. There is a group of residents who are protesting. They're doing so peacefully. It is regarding an incident that occurred last year, a shooting, officer-involved shooting last year. I understand the concern, but what I will say to those residents, that investigation, that shooting was completely investigated. They have a right to disagree with the findings, but I want them to understand there was a multiple stage process, but I do hear them. I hear concerns because we can always do things better. But I just want to share that investigation was conducted. I reviewed that. It went through multiple eyes and took multiple months. But I totally understand anytime there is an officer-involved shooting, it should be scrutinized, and there should be concerns on how we can do things better or limit those from occurring. So I just wanted to share that right now. And Mayor, if you have any questions.
And we have just a couple more announcements. One, as it relates to, I know we've shared the Independent Review Committee. The Citizen Review Board will be having their first meeting. We shared what that first case will be a part of that process. And you've heard from Chief Humphrey today. Also, we will be lifting the curfew here in the city of Little Rock. We'll be lifting the curfew here in the city of Little Rock. And also, finally, I've had different conversations with the governor and his team over the past weekend, and have asked that at least specifically here in Little Rock, that the police presence be reduced, as well as that the National Guard to be transitioned back to their normal duties. I am happy to report that the governor has agreed, and that we will begin to see a reduced presence of the state police, as well as the National Guard will be transitioning back to their normal duties. And so I do appreciate that the governor listened to the request and is honoring that request here in the city of Little Rock. It's my understanding that the EO will still remain in place, but we are glad that that request was honored. With that being said, we'll open the floor for a few questions. Again, as we shared, I will call upon the person and then do my best to repeat the question. Rachel?
In 2018, you called for the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate the LAPD. What was the result of
The question was, in 2018, when I was campaigning, I called for an investigation to the Little Rock Police Department from the U.S. Department of Justice. We did send that letter. It's my understanding from that particular letter that they gave a real generic response. They would look into it and have not heard back from that standpoint. As it relates to that specific letter, as it was in regards to the abuse of no-knock warrants. And as you know, when we got into office, we worked with the Little Rock Police Department to provide a new no-knock warrant policy that limits the use of no-knock warrants. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mayor. It's Ashley with DHB. So talk about exactly what this independent review board is going to be looking into. What kind of instances?
The question from Ashley is, what will the independent review committee look into as it relates to the Little Rock Police Department? It will look into and review policies, procedures, and practices within the Little Rock Police Department to figure out ways that we can improve. Yes, as it relates to day-to-day things that come about, this is a global review to ensure, as you understand what's going on. Again, that's the reason why I said we had already started on this process two and a half weeks ago before the untimely and tragic death Mr. George Floyd. And so this is to help ensure that we continue to get better and to improve. And so this independent look into that will provide recommendations on how we can improve. Susan?
Several lawsuits have been filed against the department and the city. How will that come into play with this review board? Is that something that you're going to be looking at?
Yes, so the question from Susan is that originally 2.5 weeks ago, part of that, at that time, that press briefing shared the scope. The scope had a lot to do with harassment, discrimination, abuse of authority, the handling of confidential information, Freedom of Information Act issues and things of that nature. All of that will be a part of this scope, this comprehensive review. So that still remains. And you are correct, the Little Rock Police Department is a very litigious department. And so this type of review helps us to figure out how we can subside the number of lawsuits, both internally and externally, that have arisen for many years. And this independent review committee is a step to forward change. Rachel, you had a question?
Yeah, can you speak a little bit about how the members of the independent review committee were chosen and what their qualifications are?
Yes, the question from Rachel is how were the members of the independent review committee? I do believe we may have some brief summary of those individuals, those 9 individuals. There are 7 lawyers, a retired police officer, and a sociology professor. When you take time to look at their bios, you'll see, if you look at the press briefing we gave 2 weeks ago with the entire scope of the independent review, you'll see the requisite experience and qualification of each member. You have notable and reputable and above reproach lawyers in the fields of civil rights, in the field of employment law, in the field of human resources, as well as understanding of sociology. Many times it's more than just the law. It's understanding implicit bias. It's understanding de-escalation training, and the reason why we need more de-escalation training and implicit biases, not only from a law enforcement perspective, but from a community perspective. And so that's another reason why we have a sociologist that's a part of this process, because we have to understand it's a law enforcement issue as well as a community issue, and we have to work together to continue to build a united Little Rock, and this is a step forward. Yes, ma'am. Well, I'll touch on that rather than the chief, since I offer the budget and part of that process for the city board of directors to approve. And so we prepare the budget, this administration, this leadership, myself along with the city manager, we co-prepare the budget, and then we present it to the city board for action. And so I'll speak to that rather than the chief of police. And so the question is, our thoughts on the movement that you're beginning to see is called defund the police. What I will share, I think we have to understand, when you really, if you take we all take time to read the demands of the defund the police movement. It does not necessarily mean to truly defund the police. What it really, as I understand it and during my research, is really to reallocate dollars that have been used from a militarization standpoint for police, from a city and a locale perspective, and to reallocate those dollars to focus more on justice from a community perspective, to focus more on denouncing racism, to focus more above all how we create fostering more equitable social and healthy lifestyles within our community. So it's really a reallocation of dollars to focus more on equity, focus more on youth engagement and things of that sort that helps build the overall community. And great examples is if one understands from a sociological perspective as well as the stats, America has our murder rate, our acts of violence rate is a lot higher than other countries, and those other countries that have lesser murder rates and acts of violence don't have as much funding as it relates to the militarization of their police forces, and they have more dollars going towards equity policies. And so if anyone has paid attention to our state of the city, one of the things we talked about in early January was the creation of an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the hiring of a Chief Equity Officer. And so this administration started out that way and will continue to end that way as we continue to focus on equity, equity in education, equity in economic development, equity in our community. No other questions? Rachel, that's the last question.
Chief Humphrey mentioned that you'd asked state police to investigate Little Rock's officer-involved shootings. Is that all shootings? Is that the last 5 years? What's the time frame?
Well, Chief Humphrey stated that he and the state police are in ongoing discussions on the state police investigating all officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths. So they've started that conversation months ago. They're still working throughout the details. And so there's not a finalized agreement, but we wanted to share this is something we've been working on prior to, and it goes back to one of the reasons why Chief Humphrey was hired was his keen focus on 21st century community police. And I think you've seen that from his community interactions over the last 11 to 12 days. And those are interactions he was having well before this period of this justice movement. Thank you so much. Everyone have a good day.